Released June 25th, 2026 on the MetaQuest platform, with a Q3 2026 Steam VR release coming up by solo Nigerian developer eMedia Interactive. I'm working my way back into puzzle-rich experiences, slowly getting back into a genre I have been consciously avoiding for a long time. CloserLook VR OldWays is another nudge in that direction. A light, story-driven VR puzzle experience that's basically a walking sim, but it's got character, personality, and heart, with the developer committed to this passion project. This was a welcomed addition to my library. Now, I do have an affinity for not only indie experiences, not just VR experiences, but these interactive experiences created by my fellow Africans. Am I going to give CloserLook VR OldWays a pass because of this? Hell no. Thanks to the developer for the MetaQuest key. Watch Season 13 of the TV series, The Lab Video Game TV, on Flow One in 25 Caribbean countries and on the Stream Blue app. Check out The Lab Video Game TV's gaming news every Thursday at 4 p.m. during the Sage Projects on Ontario's Island Radio 101.3 FM and live at cjai.ca. Now, let's take a closer look at CloserLook VR OldWays and find out if it makes the grade.
I recommend an immediate review of extraction quotas. We may be dismantling something we now understand how to restore.
The story of CloserLook is like the entire experience. A slow burn. It's drip fed to you. You fell asleep in a library while studying for an exam coming up the following day and got locked in by accident. As you attempt to make your way out, you are faced with obstacle after obstacle. Just to get out of this building, you're met upon by puzzles that seem downright ridiculous if you look at them from a non-video game perspective. The more of these puzzles you solve to get out, is the further, the deeper you get intertwined in a plot involving corporate deception, cover-ups, and an ancient mystery. A wise man once said, if you're in a hole, the first thing you should do is stop digging. Second, build a ladder. In CloserLook VR OldWays, you wake up in a hole. Think you stopped digging. Think you're building a ladder. But you're not. For a walking sim where there's no action, no stealth, no physical interactions with other characters outside speaking with your younger brother, who calls you throughout on your cell phone, I'll say the story, which is rooted in African culture, myths, and a legend, was told well.
The stories describe Omeran as a tall figure of dark ancient wood, wrapped in vines and marked with white chalk symbols.
In the audio department, CloserLook VR did well. No awards here anytime soon, but the audio was sufficient. The voice acting was subpar B-movie grade, particularly your brother Chidi. And this other observation, I'm not certain, but some of the voices, particularly the ones which did not have that Nigerian accent, may have been AI generated. Really not sure.
Yo, Tunde, it's me. Call me back when you hear this. So, I finally got caught for the murals at the staff quarters.
None of the voice acting was stellar, but still a great effort from an indie developer. I take this level of voice performance over text only. And if in fact some of these voices were AI generated, they weren't on that god-awful level as others I've heard.
The Energeon stones could solve the global energy crisis.
The score, the atmospheric background music got a bit repetitive and wasn't on a seamless loop. It paused for maybe a split second before it restarted. A small detail, but noticeable. The music is good, with that African vibe to it. Just seems to be on a short loop with a gap. The sound effects are fine. However, the footsteps could use some work. There were times when the footsteps would sound like you had many legs when walking faster. Originally, you were only able to walk at one very slow speed. The dev fixed this, but it came with that sound glitch. Over in visuals, for a Quest experience, CloserLook VR looks great. I trust the PC VR version will have upgraded visuals though. However, I've seen it many times before. When a developer releases a title first on Quest, the PC VR port hardly ever gets an upgrade. Like developers create their experiences for MetaQuest primarily, and PC VR is simply a small bonus. If eMedia decides to utilize the power of PC VR and significantly upgrade the visuals on Steam VR, this would be great. If the developer doesn't take full advantage of the platform, that would be unfortunate, but still, No big deal either way, as CloserLook VR OldWays looks fine on Quest. The environments are quite detailed, items are also detailed, and some imagery, particularly paintings, artworks, stand out as exceptionally beautiful. Some fine African illustrations which I'm pleased to see, some not so much.
A picture of Christ.
Back on the AI thing. Again, I'm no expert on detecting AI, but if I were to hazard a guess, I'd say some of these visuals, particularly the videos you find on the computers around the facility, look AI generated. I may be wrong, and if I am, props to the developer for these detailed images, but I doubt I am. When a solo indie developer uses AI to assist in crossing hurdles a limited to non-existent budget can't, you'll get no arguments from me. I have no issue with AI being used like this. My issue, which even the word issue may be an overstatement, but my issues with AI are replacing humans, taking jobs, when you know you could have paid someone to do it. Also the lack of effort and talent. AI use requires limited to no talent. People invest years, decades even, into their crafts, art, skills, just to be belittled, snubbed, replaced, rendered unemployed by lazy-ass AI creations. This review, however, isn't about my views on AI, so I'll avoid tangents and off-track rants. My point is, some of the imagery here looks great, but if they were AI generated. Although I empathize with a solo indie developer and would perhaps have done the same thing if I were in their shoes, I give no points where creativity or creation is concerned for AI usage. If AI is used for research, similar to the way I would ask Google for information when creating a project, that's different. If someone asked ChatGPT for instructions on how to create what they needed, followed said instructions, and completed said project, in the same way you would ask for assistance from a teacher, then fine. Props to you on your research and execution of knowledge earned from said research. But if AI just spat out your work for you based on a description you typed in, then no. I get why someone would do that, and in the case of CloserLook VR, I'd be happy if you did, as this isn't AI garbage. It's a pretty good VR experience, so I'm glad you saw it help to complete this development. But still, no points if AI created these beautiful images.
This guy has some real talent.
Over in gameplay, the fish and potatoes. On startup, in settings, we've got options for a standing or seated experience, locomotion type, smooth or snap turning, and the controller layout. On release, there was only snap turning, an option I really don't get in this day and age. It makes me wonder every time I see it. Do game developers actually interact with video games? Is it possible to be a game developer who doesn't really play video games and interact with or even observe the community? I've never met one person throughout my journey in VR that said they liked snap turning. And I've been in this since the PSVR 1. I get that snap turning is a good option to have for beginners, or those who have not and probably never will get over the potential nausea that can come with VR experiences. But smooth turning and full locomotion should always be the primary options. Then snap and teleportation as an accessibility option, the same way color blindness and other accessibility options are not default settings. I have never seen a flat game with snap turning, and flat games can cause motion sickness. So why do VR developers find this so hard to wrap their heads around? Either way, the developer is a committed one who listens to and takes feedback very well. Days after inquiring about a smooth turn option, it was implemented, along with a brisk walk addition, among other improvements and bug squashing. Props to the developer for his commitment to his creation. CloserLook VR is, like I alluded to earlier, a walking sim with light puzzle elements which ramp up at times and comes right back down, meaning there are no physical conflicts, no fighting, no weapons, no chance of death. The puzzles aren't necessarily harder as you progress. Sometimes I met up on a slight head scratcher. Later down, I met up on a cakewalk. These puzzles aren't particularly logic-based though. Actually, I found most of them quite illogical and convoluted, left me many times asking the question, why? Why would this particular obstacle be present in a real-life, real-world situation? I guess we can give that up to video game logic or lack thereof. After removing the logical placements of puzzles from the equation, once I stopped asking myself Why would someone do this? I became cool with the puzzles. These puzzles for most part followed a pattern, like the developer had a kind of signature approach to creating a puzzle. Some of these puzzles I literally guessed my way through them, which is made possible based on their designs. Because I'm generally burnt out on puzzles from my time with puzzle games, dating as far back as the 90s with illogical brain melters like the original Tomb Raider series, I tend to get frustrated with puzzles real quick. Like before even giving them a shot, I'd pass a section of CloserLook VR and immediately start becoming exhausted as the next section opens up, knowing I got another fresh wave of illogical, convoluted, manufactured hardships up ahead. I became fatigued to the point that at times I just needed to take a break and return another day. Then what seemed like a really hard puzzle got solved in less than a minute, like this one here, the final puzzle in the experience. Some of the puzzles require your full attention. I mean, while not all the emails and notes you read are relevant, there are a few that you'll need to pay attention to in order to progress. This is fine, but also a peeve of mine. I could even call it a necessary evil. From as far back as those early Resident Evil games, you'd be presented with the option to read these notes strewn around the game. Most of them served only as lore, ultimately useless. At first, I would read them all, thinking this info may be useful later on. After a while, I realized what they were, and moving forward, I got into the habit of ignoring them altogether, as I was never that kind of gamer. I'm more the path of the straight and narrow, no side quests, no unnecessary exploration kind of player, so when presented with these in closer look, I really wanted to ignore them all and beeline straight to the end of the experience. That is, however, ill-advised. Some notes and emails are lore only, while some are important key info for game progression. There are also artifacts lying around. They'll be based on actual African historical facts. You can view these in the gallery at the main menu. The thing about puzzle experiences I found though, and this is why I keep mentioning my desire to return to them, I genuinely believe they're great brain exercisers. Even that feeling of satisfaction I get from completing one, that feeling of accomplishment I get from seeing the credits roll on a puzzler, very satisfying. On the subject of completion, I had a difficulty completing CloserLook VR OldWays, for reasons beyond these puzzles though. I encountered some bugs that were borderline game-breaking, bugs which forced me to restart levels, which I abhor doing, where a puzzle kinda solved itself, but I never got the item I was supposed to get. This one here solved itself without me finding or using any of the books that were required. I was to get a key or something, but the box was opened and empty. So I had to restart the entire level. Right here, the phone rang as I was supposed to interact with a door and the game crashed. There were other issues, like getting stuck in the environment and ejected out. But the good news is, like I said, the developer is committed to this project. He's all ears for any bugs and glitches and gets to them right away. I completed CloserLook VR OldWays, as I prefer to do for all my reviews, despite the few bugs. But there's a strong chance that none of these bugs will be present in the current build. Games releasing with bugs was, is, and always will be a thing. What the developer or developers do about them is ultimately what counts. Some die-hard old schoolers like to say, games of yesteryear were better. Complete nonsense. Back in the day, a game shipped in a garbage state, it remained in said garbage state, and ultimately got stuck on one or many worst video games ever made lists.
That is clear desecration.
Sometimes interacting with a door feels a bit off. Interacting with some objects without crouching first initiates a janky response. There are objects you can interact with which have no effect on gameplay, and after you release them, they ultimately reappear in their original spot. That's kinda weird and immersion breaking. Overall, to wrap this up, CloserLook VR OldWays gets a thumbs up from me. To return to my earlier question, am I giving this experience a pass because it checks certain boxes? It's an indie game, a VR game, a game developed by an African. Those elements are all fine and dandy. I was also given a key, but none of these ultimately influence my opinions. They matter, but not to a degree that would lead me to compromise my integrity. Hey, Dreams of Another met most of those criteria. I ripped that game a new one and labeled it as one of the worst gaming experiences I ever had. So no, I'm not giving CloserLook VR any free passes. I totally recommend this to anyone who's into VR puzzle-heavy walking sims. It's not very long, the puzzles aren't too complex, the mechanics work as they should and pretty much as expected. The visuals and voice acting are sufficient, the story is good and potentially interesting, and slowly builds and culminates into a satisfying ending. Perhaps because of its general runtime and puzzle design, the experience never gets old or boring either, even with you being alone the entire time. Does it feel indie? Yes it does, but in a good way. Thanks again to the developer for the MetaQuest key. I'd be happy to feature the Steam VR version when released to run some comparisons as well. Watch Season 13 of the TV series, the Lab Video Game TV on Flow 1 in 25 Caribbean countries and on the Stream Blue app. Check out the Lab Video Game TV's gaming news every Thursday at 4 p.m. during the Sage Projects on Ontario's Island Radio, 101.3 FM and live online at cjai.ca. Thank you for watching. If you like my content, feel free to like, share, subscribe, turn on notifications and leave a comment. If on the other hand I found a way to piss you off with this one, then take the logical course of action. Dislike, unsub, leave a fiery comment in the comment section voicing your disgust with what you were subjected to on this fine day. Either way, I won't hold it against you, partner. Our game is never over.
Ooh, I really should get some rest. I feel so drained.